Welcome back, Inebri-ites. This is Andy of the Inebri-art podcast, exactly who you would expect to be on my show. Today's guest scared the ever-loving hell out of me as a child. It was probably in the first horror movie I ever watched. So welcome to the show, Courtney Gains of Children of the Corn.
Hey, you're welcome.
Yeah. Thanks for causing me nightmares. But I mean, I was, like I said, I was poking around on your IMDb page, and you've been in everything, including one of my personal favorites. I love the Burbs. That is one of my.
There you go. Certainly, what I learned started doing conventions about 15 years ago, it was that there was a huge Burbs subculture out there that I didn't even know existed.
It rang so true to those of us that grew up in the suburbs. You know, like it was exactly how it was. But I mean, you've been acting forever. You got stuff going on. You briefly just mentioned that there's a backlog of stuff because of COVID. Like, how much did that screw up your plans? And
it didn't really screw up my plans, but there was just projects that I had done, that hadn't come out, and I was wondering what was going on. When you do independent films, which is a lot of the work I do, you don't know when a project's coming out. But I think because of that year, it was a lost year for everybody, and including filmmakers getting their films out. And now all of a sudden they're all coming out. It's just like boom, 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 boom. So we'll get into that whenever you want to start talking about it.
Yeah, it seems like it's a really interesting time for independent films and filmmakers because of there's so many different avenues to put your work on now. There's Amazon Prime and Shudder and Netflix. It seems like it's more accessible or easier, I'm guessing, to get the work out.
Well, I think it's like a combination, right? You have more platforms than ever, but then that means you have more content than ever. So it's like getting noticed it can be tough. I mean, no one can watch all the content coming out nowadays. No, it's just too much stuff. And you can make a film, cheap now in terms of cameras and skeletal crews. You don't need everything you used to, and that there's pluses and minuses to that. I mean, running lean and mean can be great, but sometimes the filmmakers, like it took me years to understand the value of production designers in a movie. But in big movies, directors know the two most important people that they hire are their production designer and their DP.
Yeah,
because the look of the film is everything. And a lot of times they get the credit. The credit of that goes to a director, but really it's his production designer that's giving the look of the film is the production designer.
Yeah, it's always I think it was Gary Marshall who said that the test, or the true test, or maybe not test, but the true merit to a great director is if someone's in a movie and they're acting really well, that's a good actor. If everyone in the entire movie is acting well, he's like, that's a good director.
I like it.
Yeah, I always thought that was interesting. But I mean, so how has things changed? I mean, you've been acting since like the early 80s.
Yeah.
I mean, it's had to have changed drastically.
It has, and really, it's like everything else, right? From analog to digital, right? And how that changes our perceptions. So I started out, in an analog world. I started out in shooting 35 millimeter film, which was expensive and mattered. And so it was the whole way you shot was treated differently. Everybody had to be ready, everybody had to be quiet. Everybody had to be focused because you're burning film.
Right.
Nowadays it's kind of like, God, run it again. Like the director will start giving you direction while they're still shooting the video, and there's just a casualness about it that I don't really like. People talk too much, still in unions, crews, things stay really tighter because people get upset if you do their job, but it's gotten a lot looser and goosier on indie films because of that, because film is cheap now because it's not film, it's video. And I think the same thing has happened in the editing process. Not that editing isn't great today, it is, but the value of a cut is not what it was back in the day when they had the Nagra and you cut the film, you'd cut it long and tape it, then you run it, and then you'd cut a little bit. Like they called it trimming. Like you really took it seriously because if you went too far, you couldn't go back, And so the cuts were more more important. And now you can just go crazy and then go, oh, I don't like it, press delete.
Yeah, you the back button. Yeah.
So the value of things is just different,
So do you think that kind of permanency to a cut like that makes it, I don't know if better is the right word, but makes you more critical before you do it? Is that what you're saying?
Not just critical, but you take it more seriously. That's the best way I can put it, right? Because if you go too far, you can't go back. I mean, I would see them. They would like look at the thing, do a little cut, and then they run the Niagara back and forth, really contemplating their next move, and that's just not, what we get now. And I think even if you go into music and, nowadays with auto tune and all these things, it's just like the artist doesn't have to really deliver for, there's not, training's not as required, I mean,
right.
You're getting old. Like, I know I'm getting old because now I listen to songs and I'm like, there's just like the guy's saying 2 words. How's this guy making $1 million? There's like one little line in this whole song. And this guy is like blowing up. Like, I don't get it. Like, this isn't even a song to me. Like, but you're getting old when you don't understand the next generation and what they're doing. And that's, I'm there.
Yeah, that's funny. My I'm old is TikTok. I don't get it. I don't understand it. Yeah, everyone's like, oh, you just need to spend some time on it. And I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me, And that's,
well, I think it's again, these are reflections of a faster paced society, and little clips and it's like I'm putting out music right now, right? What I learned is you got to just put out a single at a time, because no one's going to listen to the whole damn record. You could used to promote a single for people to get them to hear the record or the CD. They're going to give you those 3 minutes. That's about what you're going to get. So now I'm just putting them out one at a time, and to keep the conversation alive, and that's I come from the record era. I like a great record, but that's not where we're at now.
Yeah, and it's we interview a lot of musicians, and there is this need to, instead of like, oh, we put out an album and then we go tour, it's every 3 months I got to drop a new single so I'm relevant and people don't forget about me.
Yep. It's a different beast.
Have you always been involved in music, or is that something more recent?
I always have. It's just I'm out more talking about it publicly and doing things like this. I started taking professional acting classes when I was 13, and I also started taking music lessons when I was 13. And I was certainly more intended on being a professional actor than I was a professional musician. And therefore my approaches were different, meaning like I studied music. I studied, learning to play guitar for like 2 years, learned how to do 3-chord changes and could play in rhythm and learn a few scales. And then from that point I taught myself. And for musically, I like that approach for me because I play more by a feel vibe. And if you listen to my stuff, I think you'll get that. But if I was going to be a professional musician, then I would have been way better trained so that I could actually work in the studio and I could read music well and do the things you need to do to be hired and make dough.
Right.
As an actor, that's what I did. I've studied all the methods, and I've never studied. Either I was studying or I was teaching my whole career up until recently. So I've always been in the process because, that was my job. That's how I made my ducats. So, I needed. It's a very competitive world. Auditioning and things. Very. If you're getting 1 out of 10 auditions, you're doing super well. And I was able to have that average as an actor in LA, but at the same time, I'm not getting a lot of auditions a year. Like there are actors who are, the right type that might get 100 auditions in a year. If I had 100, if I had 100 auditions a year, I'd be working nonstop. I'm getting more like 30 auditions a year.
Yeah.
So I'm getting like 3 gigs a year, 3 to 4 gigs a year. But that's enough to survive on. Right.
Yeah.
That's to keep me going and on to the next. But that being said, that's competitive, and I got to come in there and I got to get those jobs, right? It's like, I'm not the only guy trying to get that job, and I'm not the only guy who works, it's competitive.
Yeah. So you said you started when you were 13. Was this something that like your parents were supportive of? Did you come from like a creative type family? Like, what was that?
So it's a bit of a yes and a no answer. So I'll have to answer it that way. So I knew from the time I was really young, the first play I ever did, I was 10 and I was hooked, and I would bug my mom, but my mom was sort of resistant to the idea of me being a child actor. And she would cite like the Jack and Coogan stories, and the parents took the money. And I'm like, well, you're not going to steal my money. I don't understand. But really, I think she just didn't want me to be a kid actor, which is probably a smart move. But she had been an entertainer. She was in like a fame school in Los Angeles and was entertaining troops when she was like 13 years old in World War II. Like, but she looked like she was 18, like dancing and all. And they would, they were in LA, and then they would like take a plane up to Bakersfield and entertain, and then so she'd been in it, and she chose to be in it. She had her own dance studio by the time she was like 18, and then gave it all up for her first marriage. So I could never quite understand why she kept me out, but I kept bugging her. And finally, she put me in a class, and I hated the class. It was like reference like her understanding, like tap dancing and wearing tights, and I was like, no, I'm a kid from the hood. Like this ain't it. And I was about to quit, and this guy stopped me on the street. His name's Virgil Fry, and he was an acting teacher and an actor. And he was like, I like your son's look. Is he an actor? And I was like, I don't know about this guy. He's like, oh, my son's in an audition. His son comes out, and his named Sean Fry. And in the 70s, Sean worked a lot. And I recognize
that name sounds really familiar.
He was in the original. He was the kid in the original Fun with Dick and Jane. He had a good supporting role in E.T.
Okay.
He did a lot of movie of the weeks. And so I went, whoa, his son's working. He must know what he's doing. And I started studying with him. To make a long story short, he eventually became my manager, and I studied with him for 10 years. He was my mentor and broke me into the business.
And what was like your initial big break? Was it Children of the Corn?
Yeah, it was. I did a couple smaller things before that. I did an AFI film with Crispin Glover that's still out there to this day, part of this thing called the Beaver Trilogy. It's like they've done 3 versions of this thing. One Sean Penn did, one Crispin did.
Oh, wow.
So it's still out there, which is crazy. And then the first thing I did a Safeguard soap commercial, which I did the most takes I've ever done on anything ever in my career. I did like 100 and some odd takes. Jeez. And for the first half of the day, I kept hearing 10, 15, 5. And I was like, what? And he's like, don't worry about it. Keep going. When it took me half the day to realize what he meant, they were telling me how many seconds I was over on the 30-second spot. Because I was acting, man. I was doing my thing,
Yeah.
Once I realized that, I started coming in on time. Like, I guess the guy didn't care. He was just going to take the snippets he wanted. Though I have to say, I've never seen that commercial to this day. No one's ever put it up on YouTube or anything else, where I've had some other ones that have been found and are up there, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
That one I've never seen to this day.
That's always fun when someone like posts something weird, like old toy commercials or something from, back in the day.
Yeah, I did this one that was really cool for a Six Flags amusement park that like won a bunch of awards. And I didn't see that for like decades, and now it's up. And I always thought it was pretty good. It was a really pretty funny spot to do. We all get on this ride called The Edge, and we're all like, yeah, cool. This isn't going to scare us. And then by the end, like our hair is all blown out, and I had really long hair. So my hair is just like, and everybody screamed on the way down. And then it pans to me at the end. And then I'm like, I have this delayed scream, The Edge, pretty funny cool spot,
So, have you been filming things post-COVID?
Not a ton post, but I did do some, during, which was kind of surprising, which is some of the projects that are coming out and stuff. So I've only done one thing this year so far, but it was a TV show, which is good because I hadn't done a TV gig in a while. And it's a show called Tales on BET. It's a 10-episode anthology, so each episode is totally different. And I play the lead, one of the leads in it. But I play this really bad corrupt cop. So
nice.
I'm looking forward to seeing that. A little different. The funniest thing was there was this park down the street from where we were shooting, and I was just hanging out a little bit between stakes, and I went to step off the curb, and all of a sudden this car slammed its brakes in the middle of the street, like, and looked like I was scared. I'm like, what? And it was like they saw me in a cop uniform and they thought I was a cop.
Oh, that's funny.
I was like, the power of the uniform. Wow.
So do you prefer to play the bad guy in films or shows?
No, I don't prefer, but I'm good at it.
Yeah.
And what's fun about bad guys is, they're crossing the line, and you get to, leads in movies are often pretty boring. A lot of times the straight man, as it were, the bad guys are more fun.
Yeah.
But I'm just typically not, going to do the straight guy. Every once in a comedy or something, but I'm better at doing stuff that's edgy,
Nice. And so I was poking around a little bit, and there was a YouTube video of one of your songs. Oh my God. Of course I'm blanking, but it said Slash played on it.
Yeah, so that's Journeyman. So
Journeyman,
that I did a long time ago.
Yeah.
And it was put out a few different ways, and I rebooted it again on Spotify. So it was put out initially on a compilation record from a Future Farmer Records, which was actually one of my students. I used to teach in San Francisco. He was one of the co-founders, and that ended up getting did pretty well in college radio. It got picked out of there. It was very different than most of the stuff they were doing, but it got picked up. So Matt Sorum produced it, the drummer from Guns.
Yep.
And how that happened was I was dating a girl that he was dating a girl that they were best friends, and I went up to Matt's place, and my girl was bold enough to say I played music and put me on the spot. And he was like, "Play a song." We're down in the studio of his pad, and I was like, "Okay." And I did. He's like, "Your voice, you want to do something?" I was like, "Yeah, I have a song I want to do." And so I put a band together for it and everything. Basically, brought everything in, but it needed like a really good like blues lead on it, you know.
Yeah.
He was like, "Hey, well, you know, Slash is coming up to do something, and I'll hit him up." And he did. And you know, I heard that he always has a bottle of Jack. Hello?
There we go.
Dude, it started downpouring here. I'm in the Southeast, and my internet just completely went out. So I've been figuring out how to get it on the internet here and punch in the codes and everything, and somehow made it back.
Oh, no worries.
That was a journey right there. So
at first, so normally I record at my office, but I've been having Wi-Fi issues there, so I'm home. And as soon as you froze and didn't come back, I'm like, "Oh shit! Now what?" So I just assumed it was me.
It was me.
Yeah. Oh, no worries. Happens. It's technology.
Yeah, but when it rains here, you know, when it rains, and it's been storming today.
Yeah, we got hit really bad. Was it last Wednesday? Yeah, last Wednesday. There's a stage right next to Plymouth Rock, and they have free concerts on Wednesday nights.
Oh, nice.
The biggest local band in the area, they're called the Elevators, was playing, and it was the first time they've played since, you know, COVID, really.
Yeah.
And there was like 5,000 people there, and the second he was like, "Thanks for coming," if you didn't beeline it for your car, you were getting drenched. It was like lightning all around us. It was crazy.
Wow.
But great show. But I think the last thing you said was
we were talking about
Slash having a bottle of Jack Daniels.
Yeah, so he's known for always having a bottle of Jack when he plays, and he putting his cigarette on his tuners right after he starts smoking. And so I'd heard that about him. So he had brought a bottle of Jack, but I brought a bigger bottle of Jack. And I was like, "Thanks for coming, man."
Yeah.
And it was just an amazing thing to watch him work, because he has this ability to play by, you know, like improv, right? Like by feel. And then him and the guy that was the engineer was a guy who just came off a Stones record. So he was really good. They would listen back and he'd be like, "Oh, like that's a little sharp, or that's a little flat." And he'd be like, and then what did I play? And then he'd figure it out. And then they do what they call punch-ins, where they play back a punch in, get that little section, punch out. Now, if you don't do that perfectly, you lose whatever else you over recorded, right? It can be,
Yeah.
And they did this for like 2 hours and just cleaned this whole lead up. It was like an amazing process to watch.
Yeah, I've gotten to recently spend a little bit of time in a recording studio. A friend of mine opened one up. That was like his COVID project.
Nice.
And he's been recording for local bands, and it was just kind of sitting there and like watching. And then they're like, "Oh, you know, this, and you hear this and you hear that." I'm sitting over there being like, "No, man, I don't."
Yeah, I don't. Exactly.
Yeah, I wish I could, but I don't.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a real skill, and it's really impressive when people do it well.
Yeah, so I reissued that song with 4 other songs. I put an EP out on Spotify earlier in the year, and decided to do that music video. I cut that thing on iMovie, and it's just basically like, you know, old clips and old photos and recent headshots, and you know, just some, you know, kind of journeyman, right? Kind of explains my career, right?
Right. Yeah.
I thought, why not? And that's been fun. That was the first stuff I put up solo wise. on Spotify, because I also have a band. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But recently I'm putting out a project called Acoustic Gains Volume 1 right now. And we just put out our third single yesterday. It's called Let It Ride. And it's a very vintage blues song. And that actually got picked up for one of the movies I did during COVID, a little zany indie film I did called My Redneck Neighbor. And I always say, who do you think played the redneck neighbor? So that's cool that it got picked up though. So that's neat. I always like when if I do some stuff and a movie I'm in or this and that picks it up, that's always a good thing. So that song came out yesterday. So here we are promoting. There we go.
Nice. Yeah. That's, so you put out the EP, but then you have to like release each song individually. Is that like how it works now?
Well, like I said, I put out that EP for that first stuff because it was a bunch of old stuff off on a CD I had years ago called Recording Gains from 1988 to 1999. It was a bunch of singles and a band I had, and that was something I had years ago. So let me take the best of that and put out an EP, and that's when I learned that from promoting that you really have to promote singles. And so on this Acoustic Gains, I'm just putting them out one at a time, and this is our third single we just put out. It's
like I understand how things are done now, and I gotta say, like, one of the things that I miss the most is like album art.
Yep.
Being a visual art guy and, kid that grew up in the 80s with hair metal and like loved, Iron Maiden album covers and Megadeth album covers. It's just like I just feel like that added so much to kind of the mystique of the bands, I suppose. Maybe that's.
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely right. I think, it's just a product of everything going from, to everything going digital now. It just changes the whole format of the way things are done. And it used to be getting an album and I have albums still, of course. And album covers and all that was a big part of the artwork was a big part of it all. So it's just a different beast now.
And it's weird because like I'll talk to my kids about it because they're both big into music, and I'm always trying to figure out how they find new music because there's no MTV. Like it's not a thing.
How they find new music, because my kid's in his mid-20s, and I know how he does it, and how he did it, and how it is. They see stuff in movies. Like they'll hear Journey, and they'll be like, "Well, that's cool. Who's that?" And then they'll see at the end, "Oh, Journey," and "Don't Stop Believing." "Oh, that's cool." Then they'll be like, they'll get that song, and they'll be like, "Well, what else have they done?" And that's why. Nowadays, for record labels, it's all about the catalogs. That's why you saw like Warner Brothers 10 years ago buy up like every catalog they could get their hands on. So they have this massive catalog that they're basically selling to commercials, television, and movies. And then the cross section is people become aware, younger people become aware of these bands, and it's worked pretty well. And I think that's exactly what's going down in the movie industry now too. Is I think that theaters are becoming somewhat obsolete. Everybody's got home theater and video on demand, and I think it's going to become pretty common that movies come out and the same day they're video on demand. Another movie I just was in, Queen Bees, that just came out 2 weeks ago. That's exactly what they did, and I think there's going to be a lot more of that. But you see now, like Disney made the big move, like all first the platforms, the Hulus, and the all of that happened. But then Disney was sitting there going, "Wait a minute, like why are we giving them all this product that we spend millions of dollars on, and we're getting cents back?" So like, how about we do this instead? How about we buy Fox and we buy Star Wars and we own all of Star Wars plus the entire Fox catalog, plus the entire Disney catalog.
And all and all the Marvel movies.
Yeah, we're going to start a thing called Disney Plus, and like you want to see those movies, you come to us. And I think you're going to see, obviously Paramount's trying to thing with their Paramount Plus and TV thing, but I think you're going to see more of that. I think because it's just not cost productive for the studios to let Amazon and Hulu and stuff do it for them. Because it's not costing them anything. Like it's not costing they've created the platforms, but they're getting all this free content, which is why they're also making a lot of content now, because I think they knew they wouldn't be able to get away with that forever.
Right.
So they need to make, compelling enough content that you'll pay for their subscriptions. But I think that's the direction we're headed. I mean, there's no doubt that that's the direction we're headed.
And it makes from a business standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. Like, why would I sell you something at half price so you can sell it at full price when I can just sell it at full price? And where I'm located,
it took the studios a while to figure out what was happening. Was they were in they were kind of in the dinosaur age, and they had to figure out that But it was the same thing with the music business when the CD basically died. That was that was the way they made their money. And then all of a sudden they're like, what are we going to do? So they had to pivot and figure out it was catalogs. You're going to sell songs 99 cents at a time is how it's going to be. And you're going to put bands on the road and they're going to make their money on merch. And you're going to find the song's product placement. And that's what they did,
It's interesting. Yeah. And I remember I heard recently that, which I was really blown away by this, that the Chili Peppers sold their catalog of songs. I'm like, but they're still touring. Does that mean they have to pay someone to play their own songs?
I don't think they have to pay someone to play them, but somebody else owns them now as far as selling. But right now there's a huge, I forget, there was someone was telling me in another interview, there's this one guy in particular who's the billionaire guy that's gotten in the record business, and he's just like way overpaying for all these catalogs right now, or these licensing, and people are selling because they're not getting. This is the time. This guy's paying, and they know it's overvalued, and they're selling. So, but maybe in the end, you'll find out he's a genius. I don't know.
It could be like when someone sells a Picasso and it's valued at $7 million, the guy pays $13 million, because he knows when he goes to resell it, it's $13 million and up. Because you can't buy another one. You can't buy another Chili Peppers catalog. It is what it is.
Well, I mean, look at this whole NFT thing that's going on. People are paying insane prices to own something digitally now. So
I still don't understand that either.
I don't really understand it either, but I got to say, I'm not going to fully disclose everything right now, but I'm looking at maybe putting out something in an NFT with work I've done. I'm looking into it right now because I'm just like, it's just amazing what some of these guys are getting. And I'm like, it's all in Bitcoin and all that stuff. Like, hey, that you can transfer that to dollars. So I'm looking into it. It's just very interesting. Some of the stuff going on out there right now.
Yeah. And everything's changing so rapidly. It's hard to keep track of like what's going on. And, NFT is still like most people, I feel like the majority of people have no idea like that is a thing at all. Like I don't understand it, but I've at least heard of it.
The coolest thing about it is the artist, they've negotiated the deals where the artist actually continues to get a percentage if they resell it. So it's the first time in history that illustrators actually can get residual income from their art. And I think that's great.
That's amazing.
Residual income is what's saved my ass through the years. Mm-hmm. When you're in a slow period, that Back to the Future residual check comes in and saves your ass. So, and that's becoming something that actors are losing now with these Hulus and stuff, is because in the Netflix, is because there's not really a good way to track their eyeball, their revenue. Right. And they started negotiating it, but actors are not going to make the kind of money they made. And that's basically how middle-class actors survive. So you're I feel bad for actors coming up in the next generation, because I don't know that unless you're, a big star, I don't know that you can make a full living at it. I think people are going to have a side hustle. And I think then there's going to be people who are just going to leave altogether and do something else to make a living. And I think you're going to see the supporting actor pool get worse and worse. That's my prediction.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I know Netflix really does not like to share their numbers, and
they don't share it at all. Yeah.
If your residual is based on how many times it's been seen, you're not going to know.
Right. And my union, the Screen Actors Guild, through the years, I feel done a horrible job with adjusting to the times. Like the first time they really blew it was cable television. They thought they got a good deal, but if I do a show like Criminal Minds on CBS, those residuals are pretty good. Mm-hmm. But if I do a TNT show like Franklin and Bash, the residuals are like a joke. Like they're pittance compared to the other, and that's not an equal playing field for those networks. I mean, I don't feel like CBS should have to pay more. I feel like maybe they find the middle ground or something. But the cable deals, they didn't think cable was going to be of value. So the producers slid it right under, and so actors have been, taking pittance ever since. They've never negotiated the deal properly. But nowadays, as we know, I mean, cable TV is just absolutely as viable as the big network television.
Of course, if not more so.
So I feel like that actors should get paid properly, but they're not, and they never negotiated those deals. And then they missed the boat again with this whole new platforms thing. They always seem to be behind the times about what's happening, But I think they need to be paying attention. They're negotiating big deals with the Producers Guild, and they get smoked every time. And it's always the actors who suffer.
Yeah. That's it's crazy, and it just seems like the changes come like more and more frequently, and trying to keep up with everything has got to be.
But how about
monumental.
how about just to take the conservative view that this is going to be huge, so we need to negotiate a good deal now?
Right. Yeah, for sure. You got to assume that. It kind of reminds me of I saw an interview with Bruce Campbell, and he was talking about how if you're starting any kind of project with anybody on no matter what scale it is, he's like, you sit down and you break down and be like, okay, this is how the merch sale is going to break out, and this is how the action figure sales are going to break out, and this is how this is going to break out. And he's like, it's probably never going to happen, but it's easier to split $5 than $5 million.
Yeah. Smart. He's made his. He's done that. Old Bruce Campbell's done all right for himself.
He's done okay. So what are you working on now? You mentioned Queen Bees. You said that. I think you said that came out last week. That's
right,
a huge cast.
Queen Bees came out 2 weeks ago. Yeah, I just did a cameo in it, but I couldn't say no because I got to work with Anna Margaret, Jane Curtin, Ellen Bernstein, and Loretta Devine. All in one. It's just 4 iconic actresses in their own right. So that was just a great experience to get to work with them. And honestly, I didn't know if the scene was going to make the movie, much less it's made the trailer. So that was a real pleasant surprise.
Nice.
That I got even the 15-second spots I was in. I couldn't believe it. So that was a great experience, and it's doing well. And then another movie, again, like all this backlog of stuff's coming out now. So another movie I did a few years ago called Await the Dawn, little horror film, got Vernon Wells in it, D. Wallace. That just came out on Amazon Prime, much to the surprise to everybody, including the director. Hey, it's out. Who knew?
Yeah.
So that's been out now for about a week, and I have a fun character in that. And then I have a movie coming out called River on July 13th. That was an independent film I did during COVID that amazingly got picked up and out within a year or less than a year, which is just unheard of for an indie film.
Yeah.
And it's a sci-fi thriller, supernatural, but it's not like sci-fi, like in space and tons of CGI. It's a very low budget film, but it's an interesting project, and it has a really great look. The director, Emily Skye, also was the DP, and she's really excellent at using natural light and stuff. And I really like her style. And I think for her, getting a feature film was what she needed to do to take her career to the next step. And they did it as a short, and the financiers of the short loved it so much, and it won so many awards. They gave her the money to shoot the film, and now she's got
that's cool.
her first feature under her belt. And I think there's going to be more work for her to come. And
nice.
The fact that it got distribution so quickly is pretty amazing. So that's coming out July 13th. And then another movie I did over 2 years ago called Charming the Hearts of Men, which I've been wondering about for a while because it was a pretty cool project. It's coming out August 13th. And they all got picked up by Gravitas Ventures. So God bless those guys for picking up these films. And it's set in the 50s, and it's loosely based on the woman that they're giving credit for getting the word woman put in the Civil Rights Bill. And basically the storyline is she's a debutante, connected to higher echelons of society in the South, which her father passed away, finds out she has no money. She has to actually get a job. And she works at my character, Mr. Spratt's diner. And she starts to really see prejudice more firsthand. And she decides to let the black folk do a sit-in at his diner, which doesn't go over well with him, with my character or anybody else for that matter. And it causes this whole hullabaloo that in fact is true. And there's a famous photo of her holding this cake that she made. She's making cakes, kind of a little side hustle in this restaurant. And she was connected to the governor and stuff. And she got him to put the word women in the Civil Rights Bill. So but I love doing period pieces, 50s. I got like a bit of a flat top going. And but I've been waiting for that thing to come out for a while. And the trailer just came out this week, and it's coming out on August 13th. So it's like, basically I've got a movie coming out every month of the
summer. That's nice.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. And and then I got one other one that I don't know the date yet, but the trailer's out, called The Bleeding Dark. That's a horror. I call it a horror drama film because everything I'm doing is drama. It's my character and the son lose the mother to a robbery, murder. And, so we're depressed and clashing. And so everything I do is just not horror, but he, on the other hand, starts seeing her apparition starts appearing in the house, and things go haywire from there. And all the kills are very 80s style makeup and stuff, CGI.
Nice.
So I'm curious to see how that comes together, but I'm starting to see a little bit of a trend of drama and horror, and even Await the Dawn has a lot of that. It's pretty heavy. The actors are really going for it emotionally, and but at the end of the day, it's a horror film, right? So
I feel like there's been a big shift in appreciation for horror films, with like Get Out and
Get Out's brilliant. Get Out's the best. I think the best horror film to come out in a long time. And then what's the other one? The only two that I'm really stoked on is what's the other one with Art the Clown? What's that logo? You know what I'm talking about?
No.
Oh man, I can't think of the name of it right now. It's the same movie. I produced a movie called Candy Corn, and the same company, Epic, put it out. They're doing a sequel already with this thing. With Art the Clown character is the best horror character I've seen in years. He and it's a very cleverly done little film. And it was a complete auteur filmmaker. The guy did the special effects himself, did everything, edited himself. But I can't think of the name of the dang movie right now. But it was edgy. It was interesting. And the character, Art the Clown, he's now doing the convention circuits and everything. Everybody loves him.
Of course. Yeah.
He's the best. I feel he's the best character to come down the pike in a long time. And he's like, he does everything silent. He's like a silent clown, looks like a 50s clown, but really interesting and weird and creepy.
Nice. Do you have a particular favorite genre that you work in?
I don't. I'm looking for a good story, and I'm looking for a good arc, and I'm looking for something I can believe in. That's really the biggest bottom line is, can I believe the circumstances? And I always use movies like Charlie's Angels, and they're jumping out of helicopters 1 minute in with no parachutes on. I'm already out. You know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, nobody's fucking doing that. You know what I mean?
And even in like, I remember the first Suicide Squad movie, like the helicopter crashed. I mean, they're super villains, but they're not really super powered per se. And it rolls over and rolls over and rolls over, and they kind of get out and like dust the dust off. I'm like, no, I'm done. They'd be dead. They'd be dead.
Right. And that's I'm always looking for some kind of realism. And I think, I don't know, the films today, I think the reason a lot of actors gravitate toward television, series regular television, are two reasons. One, they can work at home, if they're lucky enough, or at least it's a location. But two, it's that the characters, they still have to be character-driven storylines, where now it's, I think the reason so many Aussies and English actors are getting all the work in these, because they can carry these superhero movies, because they're guys who are like Shakespearean guys who basically acted in tights before. They can say anything and sound good, What do we do here? They have, so it's like the American actor is sort of the whole run of the Pacinos and the De Niros and the Brandos and the method acting thing. That stuff doesn't transfer that well to these really fake universes.
Right. Yeah.
So it's, I don't know. I feel like American acting is not in a great place right now, but it has a lot to do with the superhero. There's nothing's about human nature anymore, about human beings or human problems. It's all about, saving the universe or saving the planet. And, I get all that. And action movies, there's nothing wrong with that, but there's just not enough movies coming. That's why I think Get Out not just stood out as a horror film, but it was an incredible sociological comment.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And that was the brilliance of it. It was like, what would be the most terrifying thing for an African-American to experience? That was the take. And that was what made it new and fresh, And good horror, if you go all the way back to, the original zombie movies and all that, there's social commentary there. And that's what makes it good. They're entertaining, but there's this social commentary about the zombies. Now it's, of course, everybody on their phones, right? I mean, everybody on their walking down the street, they are freaking zombies. Well,
that was the brilliant part of Shaun of the Dead, where people are such zombies that it takes you, I don't know, a day and a half to realize you're in the zombie apocalypse because nothing's changed.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And, obviously that movie was brilliant and that it combined, horror and comedy together, which I don't know that anybody done so well before. Yeah. Exactly. These guys are brilliant.
Yeah. Is there someone that you haven't worked with? Because you have a laundry list of like the top celebrities in Hollywood that you've worked with. I mean, from Tom Hanks on down.
It is pretty amazing if you actually take the time to put the list together, which I did once because I was doing an interview for perhaps teaching in a college thing or whatever out here in Savannah. But it's pretty, when you put the list together, it's pretty incredible, really. It's like, wow. Cause you're just doing them one at a time. Right.
Right.
You don't realize when you put the list together, it's like writing down lots of times you don't feel accomplished. I'm like, write down your achievement list. You see it on paper, you'll feel better. It's
yeah,
like,
for sure.
Okay. So it is pretty crazy, but yeah, who would I want to work with? I've been saying lately a lot of, Glenn Close is someone I would definitely like to work with. I think she's a monster, and I hear she's a very generous and good actress to work with too. So I would love that opportunity. Baz Luhrmann, I think, is a really freaking interesting director.
Yeah.
Does these musicals, but yet they're interesting. And I don't know, the way he uses music in film is very, very cool. And that show he did on Netflix, I thought was amazing about the breaking of rap in Brooklyn.
I don't think I saw that.
I forget the dang name of it, but it broke the kid's career open. But it was probably the best thing I've seen in the last 5 years. I thought it was really, really, really good. Unfortunately, he kind of got burned out on it and decided to just move on. And so they cut the series. It wasn't that the series wasn't good. They just, without him, there was no point in going on. So
right. And since you are both an actor and a musician, what are you listening to now? This is how I find new bands. I pick people's brains.
I'm terrible about that stuff. I'm listening to like records still, and I'm listening to re-listening to Janis Ian. Like In Between the Lines. I think it's one of the best folk sort of records ever made. But I listen to a lot of blues nowadays.
Yeah.
But nothing like I'm gonna help you discover some band you haven't heard of. I'm not that guy.
I always got to ask, Never know.
No, it's a good question. I'm bad with movies that way too. Like I'm not that guy that's like hunting for the most cool thing no one's heard of. I don't have the time. But I'm like a huge Buddy Guy fan. I've got a chance to see Buddy Guy play a few times live, and he's just like, I don't know, man. He's like otherworldly good.
Yeah.
So I'm just, but as I'm getting rock, sort of, I think eventually progress to blues. I think that's just sort of what you do.
I feel like you kind of, as you get older, like I said, I was big into metal and Anthrax and Louder, Faster, and now as I'm getting older, it's like, ooh, Jack White's really good, and how about these Black Keys? And that's
I think our tastes changed, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to hold the. You can still like Rush, I still like Rush. That doesn't mean I can't listen to Buddy Guy. It's like, again, I think, as an artist, I think we're always trying to break out of labels. And I think that, society and corporate music or anything else is always trying to get you to define yourself in some way. And I don't think you have to, NWA, that's a great rap album. I think if you're going to put a time capsule of that era, you could throw that record in there and nothing to be ashamed of. You know what I mean? It's like good stuff. I mean, it's just like, you don't have to, listen to whatever you like, Beastie, listen to Beastie Boys, you can do that and listen to Mozart. Why not?
Yeah. It's like record, around here it used to be Record Town. Like that doesn't exist anymore, where it was country, rap, rock, and classical.
Yeah, that's the whole thing that surprised me a few years ago that I found out that was happening, and was even in talks with somebody about maybe jumping on a song. And I know there's this guy I've done some conventions for. He's in near the Atlanta area, and he manages a bunch of bands like that. And I was just like, what are you talking about? Country rap? And he's like, no, there's a whole scene out there. And I'm like, these guys are making money. And I'm just like, what?
Yeah.
But in a postmodern society, which is what we live in, that makes sense ultimately that would happen. But that's but I've heard some stuff, and this, some of it's good, Yeah,
we got to interview this band called Gangster Grass, and they did the theme song to Justified, and it's bluegrass with two MCs, and they're phenomenal. They're like really great.
Yes, I mean, you can, people. That's what postmodernism is about. It's about pulling. I mean, in fact, rap is postmodern. I mean,
right, sure.
Beats from something else and then rapped over it. There's nothing more postmodern than that, And then now it's the next level. It's like we're gonna, country guys are gonna, because the kids growing up today that are in Nashville. I mean, they can't help but be exposed to rap because it's such a big phenomenon,
right?
That they're gonna have some influence, and then it's just a matter of time to say, well, how do we put this together? So, but that one I was a head scratcher, but but when I heard some stuff, I was like, okay, this works.
Awesome. Well, I want to say thank you for taking the time to talk to us. Where can people go to download the new album, Acoustic Gains, Volume 1?
Yeah.
Right?
So, and this plug my band too. So I have a band called Ripple Street, and our last single we put out 3 this year so far. Our last single is called Would You, And to say it's Black Sabbath-esque, I think is fair. So if you want to know, here's got the acoustic thing going and something a little heavier. You can find all our stuff on Spotify, of course, and you can find it on iTunes and Amazon and Deezer. And you can certainly find, we have some videos up on YouTube too. So, type in Ripple Street or you type in my name, you'll find some stuff. So
are you guys on Bandcamp as well?
We're not. We're not.
Okay. And so the movies we talked about, those are coming out. Some are on Amazon Prime. Did we say where the other ones are coming out?
Yes, so we got Queen Bee's out right now. Wait the Dawns on Amazon Prime. River's coming out on VOD on July 13th. And then Charming the Hearts of Men, I think, coming out in theaters and on VOD on August 13th.
Nice. Well, again, thanks so much for taking the time. And, it's a Zoom call, so we'll just edit out those technical difficulties. And
we worked it out.
It happens. Usually it's on my end, so I'm kind of happy today. But no, it was great talking to you. And to our listeners, thanks for listening. We'll catch you guys again next week.
Very good. You take care.
See ya.
All right.
Thanks for listening to today's podcast. You can find us on all social medias at Inebri-art or on Instagram at Inebri-art6. You can email us at Inebri-art@yahoo.com. And make sure you listen to the other podcasts on the Inebri-art Podcast Network, including Bar Talk, Old Colony Cast, Retro Redoctopus, America's Hometown Horror Podcast, and our newest one, Theme Park Legends, a podcast about working at theme parks. What else? And we'll catch you again next time.